This is the key for Quick Quiz 13, as if we were going over it together in class. So let's find the difference quotient for this function, f of x equals negative x squared plus 3x. So the formula is f of x plus h minus f of x over h. So let's start by finding f of x plus h. So don't think real hard, just everywhere there's an x, put an x plus h. So you're evaluating the function at a different place, x plus h, instead of at x. And now you should do all the algebra you can. So we're going to have x squared plus 2hx plus h squared plus 3x plus 3h, and distribute that negative to get negative x squared minus 2hx minus h squared plus 3x plus 3h. Okay, then the next step, if you want to break it down like this, is the numerator only. You can do it all in one step if you feel comfortable doing that, but I'm showing the broken down step-by-step version, if that's helpful. So I just want to do the numerator. So I copy f of x plus h that I just did algebra work on to get it all spread out and ready to work on. And then I need to do minus the original function, f of x, without changing it. So this part is f of x. And this part over here came from the previous step. Lots of stuff should cancel at this step. If it doesn't, you should back up and see if you've made an error. Okay, so I'm seeing that the negative x squared and x squared cancels, 3x and negative 3x. So I'm left with negative 2hx minus h squared plus 3h. Well, I noticed that all of these terms have a factor of an h, so I'm going to factor that out, because the next step is to form the difference quotient. Take this, what I just found, that's the numerator, and divide it by h. So you'll have h times negative 2x minus h plus 3 over h. So your answer is negative 2x minus h plus 3. This is an enormously important concept, up there again in the top 5. So solving quadratic and rational inequalities, that's way up there. Everything about graphing lines, transformations of functions and the parent graphs, and this difference quotient are all among my top 5 topics, I would say, in Math 12. Okay, so let's do the second part, which says I have two functions. I have f of x, which is 6x minus 5, and g of x, which is 2x squared plus 3. So the first thing I'm asked to find is f of g of negative 1. So there's two different ways to do this. Let me show you the first way. The first way is to find f of g of x, then evaluate when x is negative 1. So let me show you that way first. So f of g of x, I actually prefer this notation. I think it's clearer of what's happening. You're putting the g function into the f function. So everywhere there's an x, you replace it with g of x. And then you should simplify. So you'll have 12x squared plus 18 minus 5, or 12x squared plus 13. So that's f of g of x. You were asked to find specifically f of g of negative 1. So now you can plug in negative 1 to this function you've found and say the result is 25. Alternatively, or there's another way to do it. You could find g of -1, then plug that into f, because that would work in the same way, right? It's just a different order of doing things. So if I find g of -1, that says put -1 into the g function. So that's going to be 5. And then f of 5 is 6 times 5 minus 5. So either way, we get the same number, 25. Okay, so then the second thing you're asked to find is g of f of 0. So I'm going to show you two ways again. So one way is to find g of f of x, then put x equals 0 in. So I want to do it that way first. So I'm going to write it in this other notation that still reads g of f of x. But to me, this is clearer. This is a function of a function. So this says, put the f function into the g function. Everywhere you see an x, instead, put the function f. So let's simplify that. We'll get 36x squared minus 60x plus 25 plus 3. Distribute that to 2 and get 72x squared minus 120x plus 50 plus 3. And that's going to be 72x squared minus 120x plus 53. So then I'm supposed to find g of f of 0. So I'm going to put in 0 everywhere there's an x and get 53. So the other way I could do it is to find f of 0 and then put that into the g function. So f of 0 is going to be 6 times 0 minus 5, or -5. And then I'm going to put that into the g function. Say, what is g of -5? It's 2 times -5 squared plus 3, or 53. So either way, you get the same result. So make sure and let me know if you have questions.